Welcome to my mid-game guide. Stage 3 and 4 are the two hardest stages to play in the game right now, so in this video I will show you how to master them. We start off going over the Krugs round, then how reroll comps and value comps play the mid-game, then we talk about scouting, and finally finish off with how to build a board around your mid-game carry with some examples from my own games. At the Krugs round, you want to start thinking about what comp you're going to play this game. And you are somewhat beholden to your items, as some carries have core items. Therefore, you need to start eliminating possible comps you can play until there are only a few left. That is how we start finding direction towards a specific comp. Without direction, you will be at a big disadvantage as you're not making optimal plays for your potential endgame board. So if you have a lot of bows to make RFC, Rageblade, or Hurricane, you can go for Kayle, Zed, Shyvana, or Olaf carry. If you have a lot of swords to make IE, Deathblade, or GA, you can go for Olaf or Talon carry. Xayah carry is also an option, but she is not reliable enough to be the primary carry. You also have an out in Samira carry, but the issue with her is that she's a 5 cost, so you will not be able to reliably 2-star her in any given game. If you have a lot of tiers to make blue buff, Chalice, or Sojin, you want to go for Veigar carry. Another option is to go for Yone or Lee Sin as the secondary carry late game, but those have the same issues as Samira. If you get a lot of rods to make Deathcap, Jewel Gauntlet, or Gunblade, you want to go for Aesol or Kayle carry. But if you end up getting a bunch of defensive components, it's most likely just a BG, as there are no strong defensive item carriers in the game right now besides maybe Swain. The number one priority in that case is to pick up offensive components on future carousels in order to get direction. The units you have matter, but the items you have matter more. You will never do well with mages if you have a bunch of swords and bows, but if you have okay items to play Aesol, and you already have a lot of the Elderwood units, then the play will often be to go for Aesol, as you will hit your units with less gold once you're all down for it. So that gives you more options to push level 8 or 9 later on, which is the positive trade-off. I will also note that some comps are harder to pivot into than others. For example, Brawler Shyvana runs a couple of 1 and 2 costs, so it might be hard to hit those if you're rolling in the late game. Kayle has the opposite problem, as the comp is very expensive to hit, so if you don't have a lot of the units for it, you will have to spend a bunch of gold if you're going to 2-star all of them. At Krugs, you also want to scout to see what comps other people are leaning towards. This is especially important if you're playing a reroll comp, as most of those can only support one player. If you get contested by another player on a reroll comp, you will most likely just hold hands and go 7th and 8th place. If you're playing a reroll comp, the mid-game is very different compared to playing a value comp. Here the goal is to hit your carry and possibly some other units to 3-star. Therefore, on 3-1 you will still be level 4, and here you will roll down to about 35 gold. You will always do this, as you are only missing out on about 3 gold, as you will get back to 50 on 3-3. There's a lot of opportunity cost math behind this, so I will link an Imgur album that goes more in depth on it. Once you are at 35 gold, you need to consider whether or not you will be slow rolling or hyper rolling for your 3-stars. Real quick, hyper rolling is when you roll until you find your 3-star. This is high risk, high reward, as you might end up rolling to 0 and not hit, and from there your econ is doomed. Slow rolling minimizes that risk by giving you more gold to roll through. Therefore, you are mathematically more likely to hit. Issue with slow rolling though is that you are generally playing a weaker board throughout the mid game, and you will lose more HP than if you hyper roll. So there are 3 questions you need to ask yourself before deciding. Number 1, how many of the desired units do I have? Say you're going for Diana 3-star, and after rolling to 35 gold, you only have 5 in total. In that case, it's a bit risky to hyperroll, as you're unlikely to hit with that amount. Personally, I only hyperroll after having 7 or more after rolling to 35. Second question you have to ask yourself is how strong are you without the 3-stars? If you are sitting on 70 HP or less, and you low rolled items, you might not be able to slow roll, as you will bleed out too fast. So even if you only have 5 Dianas after rolling to 35 gold, you might have to just send it and hope you hit in order to stabilize. Third question is, when does my reroll comp power spike the hardest? A comp like reroll Wukong is strongest during the mid game when there's little CC, but it falls off later when that comes into the game. So that comp wants to hyper roll more often than slow roll. Whereas a comp like reroll Nidalee is really strong once it hits its 3-stars, and doesn't get outscaled as hard as other comps. Therefore, I always slow roll with reroll Nidalee, as I know that as long as I get a 3-star, I'll be in a good spot, whereas that is not necessarily the case with reroll Wukong. So if you didn't hit your 3-stars by the time you're at Wolves, you need to consider if a pivot to another comp is possible. The vast majority of the time the answer is no in my experience. And you also need to see how many more rounds you can greed before you need to hype roll. Usually you will need to hype roll on 4-1 or 4-2, but in some cases when the lobby is weak, you can greed to either 4-3 or 4-5 in some cases. After you've hit your 3-star, the goal is to push to as far of a level as possible. Most of the time you will only get to around level 8 until you have to roll again, but sometimes you will make it to level 9, and sometimes if you low rolled you will be stuck at level 7. There are two different types of value comps or normal comps, whichever you prefer to call them. We have comps that use 3-cost carries like Brawler Shyvana, Warlord Katarina, and Vanguard Mystics. These want to power spike hard at level 7 and hit their desired 3-cost to 2-star. From there they have two options, go for 3-star 3 costs or go for level 8 or 9. The other value comps always want to push as far of a level as possible before rolling in most cases. This is because their win condition is often 2-starring 4 costs and 5 costs. These are comps like Slayer Olaf, Kale, and Enlightened Talon. In most cases, you will be rolling at either level 7 or 8 unless you low rolled or high rolled in the early or mid game. So if you low rolled in the early game and you're weak, typically around 70 to 60 HP or lower, and you're loose streaking, leveling to 6 on 3-2 to roll down is the play in most cases. The amount of gold you roll down here depends a lot on your current board. Sometimes if you're sitting on multiple pairs, you just need to roll until you're able to upgrade 1 or 2 of them. If your chosen sucks, then selling it and rolling for a new one is often the play. If you're directionless and have no idea what you're playing, rolling for a direction is also a good play. Point is, there are a lot of different reasons to roll at level 6, and the amount of gold you roll depends on your reasoning for rolling. It can be anything from just rolling for a new sharpshooter to rolling down to 10 gold as your board is piss weak. If you're on a 5 win streak from the early game, you can consider leveling to 6 on 3-1 to maintain your win streak. Only do this if one of the 3 people you can face potentially beat you if you don't level. And if you don't know how the matchmaking system works, pause the video to read through this. I will also link this full article in the description. If you beat everyone without leveling, then stay level 5. If you're still win streaking by stage 3-2, always level to 6 here to keep your win streak going. If you're still win streaking by stage 3-5, you can consider leveling to 7 here, but if you're going to do this, make sure that you beat the remaining 4 players you face until Wolves. You will often be sitting on 20 to 30 gold after leveling to 7 here, so if you lose your streak, you also lose your entire eco lead. If you didn't high roll or low roll in the early game, you level to 6 on 3-2 if you stay above 40 gold. If you go down to 30, you can consider it, but it's not something I would do unless I have something great to put in, or if I'm on a 3+ win streak. Sometimes staying above 50 gold instead of leveling is the play, as you can always go level 6 on 3-3 if you stay above 40 gold after leveling there. You can also level to 7 on 3-5 or 3-6 if you stay above 40 gold after leveling. Once you get to Wolves, you need to consider whether or not you're fast 8ing or going to be rolling down at 7 next turn. This will depend on the current strength of your board and the other comps people are playing. If there are a lot of reroll comps in the lobby, they will all hit their 3-stars at 4-1, so they all power spike here. Similarly, comps that use 3-cost carries will also roll here to get them 2-star, so they also power spike here. If you scout and see that there are a lot of them in your lobby, then you might have to roll down here as well. If you don't roll in that instance, you might end up taking between 30 to 50 damage over the next 3 turns, which will force you to go level 8 on 4-5 and roll down there. When rolling at 7, what you're looking for is generally direction towards a late game comp, a new chosen, 2-starring 2-cost and 3-cost units, while also picking up 1-star 4-cost units you find. Similarly to rolling at level 6, the amount of gold you roll at level 7 depends on how much you need to hit in order to be stable. This can be anything from finding a new chosen to use for stage 4, or to upgrade 2 to 3 units to 2-star. Just try not to go below 10 gold as you still need to go level 8 on 5-1. If you decide to fast 8, you need to have at least 70 or 80 HP or more and or be win streaking coming into Wolves. In addition, you will also need enough gold to roll at 4-5 after leveling to 8. Even though your stage 3 board was strong, it might not cut it for stage 4. So whenever I'm fast 8ing, I always assume I'm taking at least 30 plus HP due to all the people who roll on 4-1. But like I said earlier, scout the lobby to see how many people will be rolling down on 4-1 to get more information on the correct play to make. When rolling at level 8, you are looking for your endgame comp, so it will depend on what comp you're going for. I already mentioned scouting a couple of times in the previous segments, but scouting in the mid-game is crucial for a couple of different reasons. Not only is it great so you can position better for other people and evaluate the strength of your board, but you also gather crucial information that allows you to adapt your late game board. So when you're scouting, look for how people are positioned, how strong their board is compared to yours, what comp they're going, what units they have, what items they have, and what synergies they have. Most comps can only support 2 to 3 players at max, so if you see more than that going for your comp, you need to make a backup plan and seek out potential pivots you can make. The only time I would stick with a comp and not pivot is when you have near perfect items for your comp, or if you have no other realistic pivots, or if the comp is OP in the current meta. You look at positioning to make sure your carry isn't getting CC'd or getting jumped by assassins. This is crucial as positioning makes or breaks fights in TFT. Good positioning into a player who is stronger might allow you to win, while bad positioning into a player that is weaker can result in a loss. Looking at people's items, units, and synergies will allow you to adapt your late game board, and I've already made a guide that goes over that subject, so check out that guide if you want to learn more, and I'll link that in the description. A lot of people think about the comp they want to end up with in any given game, but most people don't think about the current comp they are playing. In other words, we have an early game comp that we play on stage 2, a mid game comp for stage 3, a late game comp for stage 4, and an end game comp on stage 5 and onwards. So in any game of TFT, the main goal is to figure out what our end game comp is, but we still need to play a strong board until that point comes. Therefore, we need to play our strongest board every turn until we reach the end game. This is arguably the hardest skill to master in TFT, and this advice gets thrown around a lot. Play your strongest board every turn. The way we play our strongest board every turn is to build a comp around our mid-game carry. This is your item carrier in most cases, and in my games, those are commonly Shyvana, Severe, Kindred, Teemo, Zed, TF, Tristana, or Nidalee. The next step to making our board stronger is to think about what makes our carry succeed. Does it need specific synergies to do well? Does it need enough frontline so it can cast its spell enough times? Or does it need specific items to do well? Since we get offered different units every game and different star levels of those same units as well, it's very hard to always be able to pick out the strongest board every game. Therefore, I'll go over some examples of my own mid-game boards and show what's good with them or bad with them. Here I am on stage 3-1. My board doesn't have a clear strong carry, as my Nidalee is only 1 star and has no items, but Garen was doing most of the damage throughout the early game, so I want to continue building my board around him for the time being. 3 Warlords make my Garen, Jarvan, and Nidalee stronger, so I would like to keep that in. The other option is to go for 4 Vanguard by cutting out the Jax and either Jarvan or Nidalee. I never level here as I'm only on a 1 win streak, so putting in both is not an option. Here we are already at an interesting roadblock as both the Warlord option and 4 Vanguard option are strong in different ways. Since 4 Vanguard is very powerful in the mid game and we also have a 4 cost unit with Aatrox that gives us backline access, I decided to end up with this board. Here I took out Jax and Nidalee for Braum and Aatrox. I kept in Jarvan over Nidalee as I get full locket value and I can also frontline everything. On 3-2 I want to level as I can stay above 40 gold after leveling, and I also have something good to put in with Nidalee for 3 Warlords. She also has some stacks on her from the early game, so I sell my Jax to make 40 gold and continue to build my board around Garen. On 3-3 I get offered a Kalista Chosen. If I pick it up, I get to put in 3 cultists. The only issue with running Kalista in this situation is that she is very dependent on items and the duelist synergy, and I have no way of getting both of those in this scenario. I ended up buying and putting in Kalista as she is still a 2-star 3 cost and Galio can also help clean up the units. On 3-5 I get a Lucky Lantern with Chain Vest, Tear, and Reforger. I end up making Sunfire Cape to use up one of the Chain Vests. Although this item falls off late game, it's insanely strong for my current comp as 4 Vanguards are very tanky and result in long fights. In addition, I can reforge the Sunfire and the Lockets later on, as those items fall off hard late game. In my shop, there is nothing too interesting. I finally made it to 50 gold, so I end up selling Aesol for Shen so I keep staying above 50. I also never level here as I'm only on a 2 win streak. If I was on a 5 win streak and was considering leveling, the best thing I could put in was Nidalee for 3 Warlords. And in that case, that might have been enough as it makes both Jarvan and Garen stronger. On 3-6, the shop doesn't offer me anything that makes me stronger, but there is a kale that I might be able to build my comp around depending on the items I get from wolves, so I end up playing the same board and I pick up kale and Vi as I stay above 50 gold. On 4-1, the shop is very uninteresting and doesn't make my board stronger, so I level to 7 and then start scouting to see if people are rolling down. After scouting, I concluded that I was strong enough to fast 8 without taking too much damage. I put in Italy for 3 warlords and also make Hajj on Callista. My items from this spot are very awkward and don't lead me anywhere specifically, so that is also another reason for not rolling, as I need more concrete items before committing to my final comp. This game ended up being a 4th, particularly because I was still hard stuck Kale 1 on stage 6, but mostly because I played my mid-game correctly and saved enough HP to not bleed out faster than the other players. Also, I ended up reforging the 2 lockets for those wondering where they went. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, comment down below what video you want me to make next, and if you want to get better at TFT, join the Discord. We got over 1,000 other players there who are hungry to climb, and if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care and see you in the next video.